I want to tell you a story about a guy who really, really impacted me in this lifetime. And he had silent power like you wouldn't believe. And I was working on a project, and this guy showed up. It was a construction project. And he came along and he said, I'd like to build a Japanese garden here on this building site. And we said, well, we have no money to build a Japanese garden, you know, and we don't need a Japanese garden. And he said, no problem, I'll build it anyway. So we said, okay, build the Japanese garden. So he started building this garden, and his dedication was that while he built this garden, he wouldn't eat. Just wouldn't eat. So every day he'd come to work at 7 o'clock, and this was in California. And he'd be moving these amazing logs of wood, just walking with them. I mean, unbelievable weights. And he'd take them and he'd dig a hole all day just to put one log in the ground. At night, he had this little harp, this little Jew's harp, which is that little metal harp that you place against your teeth. And it makes that very strange kind of wanga, 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 wanga noise. And he'd stay in the garden at night. He wouldn't go home. He'd sleep in the garden and he'd play this harp and he would guard his garden. And he'd look at the energies and he'd watch the energies. And then the next day, he'd move logs, dig, move rock, and he never ate. And every day I used to watch this guy working. I couldn't believe that he'd work in the hot sun without eating. Never ate. He did drink, but he didn't eat. He drank water mostly. And I'd watch him every day, and he never talked. He just built this Japanese garden. Just carried on building it. And sometimes at night, I'd go and sit with him, you know, like at 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'd listen playing him, playing this little harp with his mouth, ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding, really haunting. And I'd look at this guy and think, fuck, this is power, man. This is pure power. This guy is so humble and he's so strong, you know? He just carried on building his garden. He built the garden in 42 days without eating. Just built it. And when he built it, it was beautiful. It was an amazing Japanese garden. And nobody helped him. He just built this garden. That's all he did. And as soon as he finished building it, just left. He just left. He didn't ask for thank you. He didn't ask for, wow, isn't this amazing? He didn't ask, did you like it? Did you not like it? He built this garden more or less in silence, day and night for 42 days, you know? And then left. And I thought, wow. That's dedication, you know, that's it. That's the power. You know, and it says so in the Tao, you know, when your work is finished, leave. And I know when my work is finished on this earth plane, I'm leaving, like within a second. Ding, ding, let's go. And he just built this place, and I learned from that man. I learned more from watching that man than I've had in all the bloody books I've ever read. Because I actually saw at a very young age what silent power really looks like. And then something amazing happened, right? I was walking through an airport, maybe 10 years later, and I saw him walking towards me. And he was with a woman and a small child, and he was carrying a small child, you know? And I was so happy to see this guy. I was so happy, and I called his name, you know? And he looked at me, and he smiled, you know? And he just walked up to me, and he stopped, and he just went like this. And he just bowed. And walked straight past me. Never said another word, you know? And I'd spent so many nights in the garden with him, you know, just sitting with him, you know? And he just stopped, he bowed, and went straight on with his family, never said a thing. And if he'd talked to me, it would have completely ruined his story for me, do you know what I mean? It was so cool that he didn't say anything, you know? But I was so emotional. I mean, I love that man more than anybody else. And yet, it doesn't bother me in this lifetime if I never speak to him again, you know? Because he had the power. And he knew he had the power. And he didn't have to be grandiose. He didn't have to be flashy. He didn't have to explain it to anybody. He didn't have to explain why wasn't he eating. You know, why do you stay in your garden all night? Why do you play this funny instrument? Why do you do Japanese gardens? You're not even Japanese. He was European. He didn't explain himself. Didn't ask for any money. Didn't ask for anything. And the day he finished, he left. Didn't ask for thanks. Just wasn't there anymore. Ding, ding. And that guy taught me. He taught me what this journey is all about. You know? And each one of you has a Japanese garden somewhere to go build, you know? Build it. And when you finish, leave. Thank you.